Good morning, everybody, and weirdly tiny people on my screen. Welcome to the London South East Fuel Poverty Forum. I am your chair, Rebecca Jones. We've got about 2 hours worth of stuff for you this morning. It might not last that long. It's really hard to tell, to be honest, in this kind of format. This is the first online forum that NEA have done. So welcome guinea pigs to the brave new world. It's quite exciting. I'm just seeing that. I'm hoping it'll, go swimmingly, but it might not. If not, I have my lovely colleagues Nina and Brian helping me out this morning, doing my admin side of things, looking at helping me with the tech. But actually, I think we've probably got it sussed. If you want to ask any questions, then you can do the clapping hands thing or waving hands thing. So if you haven't done it before, if you look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little tab that says reactions, and you can react like that. And but here, as exampled by Brian there. So me and Nina and Brian will all be looking out for you doing that. But you can also put a comment in the chat bit. Any feedback you've got would be great. Or any questions, also lovely, you can put them in there. That would be fabulous. Because we won't be doing the normal feedback forms, obviously, because we haven't got any paper to throw at you. Anything else I want to come past you? So I'm going to kick things off with talking a bit about what I've been doing at NEA over the last couple of months, because I thought that was quite useful to know, and obviously I like having a bit of a chat. But having a weirdly silent audience, I'm never quite sure about, actually. It's a bit strange. So if you want to put your videos on but remain silent, I would absolutely love that, because there's nothing weirder than having a row of black boxes that you're talking at. Thank you. I won't be criticising what your hair looks like today, I can assure you. So after I've finished nattering on for a bit, we're going to have the policy update. And Matt has recorded that for us because he couldn't be with us today. So I'll be playing a recording of that. But we will obviously still take questions, and any questions that we can't answer, we'll take back to the policy team and feed that back to you afterwards. Then we're going to have Jamie doing an update on the project she's been working on. Again, she has recorded that because we weren't quite sure whether she would have her baby or not today. So she's about to go for maternity leave, so we thought it more sensible to record that just in case, but she might well be with us this morning. And then we'll try and do a round the room thing like we've done in my previous forums. Again, I think we'll probably have to do the waving hand thing. If anybody has any updates that they wanted to share, that would be great. Then we'll have a bit of a tea break where you can go off, have a comfort break, grab a cup of tea, come back, and we'll unmute you and we can all have a bit of a chat if you want to, but you can mute if you don't want to talk, that's fine. And then we'll run the workshop, which again, I'm going to press buttons and you'll automatically be put into breakout rooms. This is really exciting. Hopefully that will work. We've got some really interesting questions about best practice and actually things that haven't worked so well in the last couple of months for you. And then we'll feedback for that, and then you'll be allowed to go and have your lunch, which unfortunately, we aren't supplying this time, so I'm sorry about that. No lovely sandwiches from NEA today. So with no further ado, I'll just keep an eye on my time. I'll tell you a little bit about what I've been up to. So we started off in a rather interesting position in that we'd been having quite a lot of one-to-one referrals coming through as a charity anyway. So we started up our Warm and Safe Homes referral setup. Which I'm sure many of you have accessed through our website and through us as individuals already anyway. And that has been working really well. But of course, suddenly it's come into its own over the last couple of months, because all the agencies that we normally work with aren't seeing their clients face to face. We're having to do everything online and over the phone. So we've actually been very busy all across the country, taking referrals from agencies and organisations and from individuals. So lots of people have been self-referring as well. They have been getting onto Google and finding us as a charity, or finding us on Facebook and getting in touch with us and asking for support. So all across the country, including Wales as well and Northern Ireland, we've been taking on one-to-one cases, which has been really quite challenging, as I'm sure you can imagine. And when we go into the workshop, I'll talk a little bit about that. But we have managed, and I think we've managed really well. We've helped a lot of people over the last couple of months, and I have to say I'm really proud of us as an organisation of how we've tackled the lockdown and have continued plugging away and working really hard to support people and organisations. So our training is still up and running. You can access our training online now as well, which I think is pretty impressive. It all happened so fast that it's great. So that's the basic sort of bread and butter stuff that we normally do. And then we've also started doing talks to groups online. So that's another part of the project work that we do. We do small talks to groups of vulnerable people. And that has really only just started. I'm about to do a talk to a stroke group in a couple of weeks' time, and my colleagues have already started doing them as well. And that's really exciting to be able to do that. Another project that I've been working on is one that was funded by UK Power Networks, and that has been to support groups of refugees. And it was initially sort of in the south, because that's where UK Power Networks are based. And so I and my former colleague Tom did a couple of workshops for the Refugee Council. But then we were left with one workshop left that we were meant to do for them, and they got in contact with me and said they'd started doing various talks with their clients online. Would I like to give it a go? And I thought, oh, how's that going to work? It's not very interactive. So I got together with the training team and we put together a workshop for them, and actually it worked really well. They were all accessing it on their phones, which did make for some rather challenging interaction, I have to say, because you can only really squiggle with your finger on your phone when you're on Zoom. But it went really, really well, and we had some really positive feedback, which is really lovely. And then as a result of that, another refugee charity, the Helen Vamber Foundation, who I'd already done a couple of workshops with, got in touch and said, can we do our final workshop as well online? Yep, brilliant. So I've just done that last week as well. And that was also really good. It's not anywhere near as much fun as the normal group work we do, because normally I'd sit down and have a cup of tea with everybody and chat to everyone and get to know them a bit. And you can't do that as well. And obviously some people don't want to share their videos if they're recording from home. So it's a little bit different, but again, the feedback was really good. And as a result of that, they have publicised NEA through a lot of refugee outreach organisations across the country, and they've all been in touch. It's been I've had a lot of emails over the last couple of weeks about other organisations who want our support, which is absolutely brilliant. So that's kind of what I've been up to. We also have various little pots of funding that pop up every so often. So not that we tend to advertise it too much because they go really fast, but if you do know a client who's on a prepayment meter who could do with a top up, let me know. Because we do have a very limited fund at the moment for emergency top ups for vulnerable people. Obviously there are some criteria which I can share with you later, but do get in touch if you've got any cases that you think need some extra support. We do have the capacity, because if I don't have the capacity, then one of my colleagues will as well. And because we're doing it all online and on the phone, there is almost limitless capacity at the moment to support people. So if you've got any groups that you think could do with a talk who are doing stuff online, then give me a shout and we'll see what we can work out. We can make them as long or as short as they need to be as well, with as much content as they need. So hopefully that should be good. Righty. That is Moomin Papa, in case you're wondering. Okay, so that's probably quite a nice end to what I'm saying. Actually, I should just ask, does anybody have any questions about what I've said so far? Excellent. So quiet, it's really weird. I don't like it. I want you to be all talking and making noises and clinking your mugs and stuff. Okay, so I am now going to share the policy update. So bear with me while I do the technical stuff. Okay, here we go.
Welcome to the Summer 2020 NEA Pure Poverty Forum Policy Update. I'm going to take you through some of the developments since the last Fuel Poverty Forum, and hopefully just give you a glimpse of the sorts of things we've been up to. Of course, our work's currently being shaped by the pandemic. I will go into this in a little bit of detail during this presentation, but for a full comprehensive view on how COVID-19 has impacted on our policy priorities, you can watch our recent webinar. You can follow the link just there. I'm sure that you'll get the presentation sent to you reasonably soon. That webinar, we also had speakers from BAYS, from Energy UK, and from Systems Advice. So if you weren't on that webinar at the time, then it's well worth a watch. Today I'm going to talk about our work surrounding the impacts of COVID-19, our continued campaign for warm home discount extension and expansion, our campaign for a green economic recovery, the continuation of the prepayment tariff price cap, and a little update on water poverty, in particular our social tariffs paper. So firstly, our work surrounding the impacts of COVID-19. As I said, we've refocused our priorities due to the pandemic and have been working with industry and policymakers to make sure that the energy market remains fit for purpose during social distancing rules. There's three main things we've done to do this. Firstly, quite early on during the lockdown, we collected information from our own colleagues who are working on the ground with clients to understand what the barriers to accessing support were. We collated these and put them in a report called Addressing the Impacts of COVID-19 on Vulnerable Energy Customers, which you can see through following that link. We also proposed measures to ensure that those households were treated fairly during the crisis. Towards the end of the main lockdown period, we did some work on utility debt, so specifically energy and water debt that built up during that lockdown period. This is quite acute because many people have seen reductions in incomes and many people have seen increase in energy and water use during that period. That all adds up to increasing debt arrears. So within that paper, we discussed what the scale of that might be and how it could be mitigated, both by suppliers in treating their customers fairly in their debt collection processes, but also by government with things like payment matching schemes, but also by bringing forward legislation that was planned to come in next year to give breathing space to those in debt. More broadly, this year's Fuel Poverty Monitor will focus on the impacts of COVID-19 on fuel poor households, and we've been collecting information to feed into that. We've done this through a call for evidence that many of you may have responded to. And we'll be using some of the insights of that to write some blogs over the summer to describe how the impacts of COVID-19 have extenuated some of the things we were already seeing in the energy market, like digital exclusion and other such things. We've also captured some best practice from the call for evidence that we'll be sharing over the coming weeks and months. Next, more business as usual. And this is something you would have heard me talk about quite a lot if you've been to forums before in the last couple of years. But we continue our campaign for the warm home discount scheme to be continued after March 2021, and also for it to be expanded. The context for this has changed a bit, and I'll get on to that in a second. Firstly, we have worked quite closely with our partners Fair by Design and released a report, the beautiful front page you can see there, outlining the need for the scheme to be extended and expanded. And we make the case there for an expansion of the scheme to cover more automatic payments, because we don't believe that the broader group applying to get the warm home discount is fair, and we believe that automatically selecting people will give a more consistent level of support and a fairer level of support to people. Since the start of the pandemic, it's become clear that the government is unable to work as quickly as we'd like them to. Because of this, we've had to change our strategy a little bit on this, and we don't think that it's sensible to ask the government to consult on an expanded scheme that can start in April 2021. Because of this, we've written to the Minister along with 60 other signatories to ask clarity on the immediate future of the scheme, broadly asking for a continuation of the scheme as is for 1 year after March 2021. We also asked for some clarity on the future of the scheme after that, and for them to consult on wider measures to make the scheme better with the things like automatic payments for more people starting in April 2022. On top of that, we engaged more broadly with Parliament, engaging MPs to put pressure on Bayes and the Minister to provide urgent clarity on the future of the scheme, so the 1 year extension. This has gone pretty well to date, and we remained pretty confident that they sort of have this in hand, especially with the 1 year extension. They understand the need to do it, and they understand that it needs to be done with haste. Next, we've joined many organisations across the spectrum that are calling for a COVID-19 economic recovery package to be a green one, centred around supports for energy efficiency. Now, I should say that I'm recording this in late June, and we're expecting an announcement on part of the recovery package in early July by the Chancellor. So you may be seeing this after an announcement, where we may or may not have been successful. If we are successful, then I'll be jumping with joy. If we're not successful, then it isn't the end of the road, and we get another big crack of the whip towards the end of the year in the autumn budget or statement. I can't remember which one it is. But the good news is that dozens of organisations have released reports, written to government and briefed the press, all focusing on encouraging a new energy efficiency scheme that will create thousands of jobs, reduce fuel poverty, reduce emissions and tackle health inequalities. We've contributed to many of these, bringing together health professionals, charities and green NGOs, writing to the Prime Minister to signal the need for such a scheme, building on the manifesto commitment from the Conservatives to spend 9.2 billion up to 2020 on energy efficiency, more than half of which would go towards social housing and fuel poor housing. We were unsuccessful in the March budget, possibly because of it became the coronavirus budget. We're relatively hopeful that we'll get something in July, though I won't I won't go too hard on that, given that many of you are watching after then. But overall, we remain pretty confident that this will happen, either in this fiscal event in the summer or the next one in the autumn. Next, some really good news. So there's been a prepayment cap in place for several years, and the reason that's in place is that the Competition and Markets Authority have in their energy retail market review several years ago recommended that it should be there, and it should be there until the smart meter rollout had finished, and that means the end of at that time it meant the end of 2020. That was great, but because of what's happened since then with the slowness of the smart meter rollout, it means that the cap will actually end before the smart meter rollout finishes. So the cap ends at the end of 2020. And the CMA have no powers to enforce a continuation of that cap. They wrote to Ofgem to ask them to continue the cap, and Ofgem have decided that they want to. They consulted on the continuation of the cap in a policy consultation earlier this year, and now they have just finished a statutory consultation on the cap. And usually when there's a statutory consultation, it means that things will almost certainly happen and go through. This is fantastic news and will provide much needed protection to approximately 4 million households who have a prepayment meter and are on a standard variable tariff. It will be set at the same level as the default tariff cap, meaning it's simpler across the market to understand what the cap level is, and also gives it a bit of longevity as well, because that cap is expected to be in place for a good few years now. Our conversations with Ofgem suggest that they would be willing to extend further than the lifetime of the default tariff price cap, if that were necessary, but they don't see the need to separate them at the moment, because it would sort of create a lot of admin and confusion in the market. But overall, this is fantastic news, meaning that more customers can receive price protection for longer. Finally, onto water poverty. We have published a new report on the consistency of social tariffs in the water sector. This looks at all the different social tariffs that water companies offer and how appropriate they are for providing financial support to households all over the country that suffer from water poverty, and that also more than likely suffer from fuel poverty at the same time. We make 3 recommendations in this report, all of which we're following through. Firstly, we think that government should conduct a thorough review of social tariff guidance in consultation with water companies and stakeholders to make the supports fairer for all. This is because the level of water tariff and who receives it are quite inconsistent across the market, meaning that it's almost a postcode lottery about what sort of support you receive. We think particular consideration should be given to alternative options of funding social tariff schemes. At the moment, this is done through cross-subsidisation, where relatively more well-off customers agree to fund cheaper tariffs for relatively less well-off customers. This means that the water companies have to heavily engage with all their customers to understand what sort of cross-subsidisation is acceptable. But this is really difficult to understand because the way you frame questions can have a massive impact on people's answers and therefore the level of cross-subsidisation. So we think that something more standardised and government mandated would be more sensible, but considering different options of how you could do that is really important. Thirdly, we think government should prescribe core eligibility criteria. As I said, it's a little bit of a postcode lottery as to not just how much support you get, but whether you're eligible or not. And we think that a more standard criteria for being eligible for such tariff would be sensible, much like we have in the warm home discount on the energy side of things. This would make it less of a postcode lottery and ultimately make a fairer market for all. That's my presentation today. I obviously can't take questions right now because I'm not there with you, but if you do have any questions, please pass them on to whoever's running the event. They'll pass them on to me and I'll endeavour to answer them in due course. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the Fuel Poverty Forum.
Lovely. Brilliant. Lovely. Thank you to Matt, invisible Matt at the end there, bit weird. So does anybody have any policy related questions? I know you're all disappointed it's not doing me doing my newsreader bit with the policy update. I will do it next time, don't worry. Anybody see any questions?
Hi Rebecca. I can't work out, hello. I'm used to Teams and I can't work out how to raise my hand. So
oh, that's okay. So in order to do that, if you take your cursor to the bottom of your screen, you'll see some little things pop up at the bottom like chat and reactions. Yeah. So reactions is what you want.
Okay, well, I'm going to clap.
That's fine. Clapping's good.
I do have a question. I mean, partly it's two questions, and maybe somebody will know, or nobody will know, or you're based. I don't know. One, obviously, we got the news yesterday. Part of that news, and I have been trying to work out what the impact of that is. Are we now just waiting for autumn, or is that like a part announcement that we had yesterday? How bad is yesterday, basically, for our hope of him fulfilling his manifesto pledge? Sorry.
Would anybody like to pick that one up? You are all welcome to unmute yourselves, particularly Peter down there in the corner.
Well, I'm sorry, hi there. I'll just step in to say, I mean, to be honest with you, I think we're just digesting that ourselves as well. So I think what we need to do, Louise, is just go back, talk to Peter and Matt about our response to that, and then get something around, your group, you guys, because we're all aware that it's a rapidly changing situation. Clearly, we're trying to put together the best sort of responses. And yeah, so I can't give you an answer now, short answer, but we'll get back to you. You're right to raise the point. I think you're echoing something that everybody else is probably feeling as well.
And my second question was just about the water poverty. And obviously I'm from East Sussex, and I've always liked to reduce the postcode lottery. But often what happens is that when we put it out everywhere, where places with high housing costs actually do worse, because if it's this is your income at 16,800, if your household income is this, then you're considered, or you have and that's the only low income variable. Obviously there's health often included in the social tariffs, or heavy water use and other stuff for the water, but if an income one is used, often places with high housing costs are actually disadvantaged because it's averaged over the country. So I was just wondering, I have read parts of that report, and I was at the conference last year, and I talked, and I've worked really closely with South East Water and Southern Water, but I've just wrote it down.
Yeah, and I think that is a problem that we do have in the South,
yeah.
Actually, is people presume that we're all really well off and there's no poverty, and just because only pretty much the coastal strip and a small bit of Littlehampton hit the index of multiple deprivation, that there isn't really much here. But the problem is it's all a bit spread out.
Yeah, I mean, Rother, the district of Rother has the lowest average income in the country, weekly income. So yeah, no, it's just because obviously that's always a big issue with when making things simpler and making things more accessible and more straightforward is really important. But the flip side of that is that if your housing costs are really expensive, then you doubly get screwed, for want of a better word.
Well, it's very, very clear. No, so just to kind of say that obviously, as far as water poverty is concerned, you're probably aware from previous forums that NEA is now got sort of taking forward a project around water poverty.
The Northumberland Water one.
So Northumberland Water are basically supporting a post, essentially, to enable us to do some work in this area, but it's independent of Northumbrian Water. And it's our colleague Jess Cook is the individual that's kind of trying to put forward and work with the industry and the regulator to frame a campaign about what water poverty is, and how the industry should respond to it in terms of seeking to eradicate it, frankly, over a period of time. So that's what the campaign is trying to develop. However, obviously, a lot of that is framed around, mitigations within what the each individual water company kind of does. And actually, what would be interesting, Louise, maybe would be for you to have a quick conversation with Jess, just to feed in.
Yeah, I'd love to. I work really closely with our water companies, and I think it's, and we recently had the Priority Service Register and the work with UKPN done there, which is really positive. So I think it is, and I think NEA was a big part of that being pushed forward as well. So yeah, I think it's really positive. So yeah, I'd love to. I'll give her. I think I've got Jess's email. I'll give her that.
Yeah, we'd welcome.
Sorry, everybody.
No, that's really interesting, Louise. Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions? You can unmute yourself and shout, or you can do the reaction thing down the bottom. Lovely. Well, that's nice and easy, isn't it? Okay, so I'm now going to ask Brian if he would share Jamie's video for us.
Hi everyone, I'm Jamie Lee Rosenborough, Senior Research and Policy Officer at NEA, and I'm here today to highlight some of the impacts achieved and lessons learned as a result of our Connecting Homes for Health pilot research project. Before I go any further, I'd like to share Steve's story with you. Steve is a disabled war veteran. He suffers from PTSD. He lives along with his dog, Baxter, whom he considers to be his closest friend in the world. Steve had to leave his job due to ill health. His income was drastically reduced and he had fallen into arrears with his mortgage payments. He was in dispute with the Ministry of Defence over the calculation of his war pension and he was living on universal credit. He had one inefficient storage heater in the living room and 2 portable electric heaters. He could not afford to pay his energy bills. He generally found himself sitting in the dark and cold at home. He would wear a pair of leather gloves to try and keep his hands warm, but that wasn't enough to prevent the pain creeping into his joints and causing him great discomfort. But he preferred to suffer the pain in his hands than to risk falling further into fuel debt. At one point, his universal credit payments were temporarily stopped. For days, he did not eat, but drank only water. Steve felt incredibly ashamed of the circumstances in which he found himself and had progressively cut off contact with friends and family as a result. He did not want them to see him struggling and was too proud to stomach the thought of their pity or their offers of help. Feeling cold, hungry and isolated made it harder for him to cope with the symptoms of his PTSD. The only person he ever really saw was his dad, who was suffering from a terminal illness and lived nearby. 1 year after participating in the Connecting Homes for Health scheme, Steve is transformed. He has an efficient and fully working heating and hot water system and knows that he can stay warm when he needs it. Despite using his heating system more, his energy costs have reduced so much that he is now able to save money each month. He even has £500 in his savings account. He can afford to buy the food he wants and not just the bare minimum. He has even had help in securing a manageable repayment plan with his energy supplier and is gradually clearing the fuel debt that he had accrued before signing up to the scheme. His leather gloves are no longer needed when he's at home. His hands do not hurt anymore and he can take regular hot baths to further help manage his joint pain. He feels financially independent and happy. Because he no longer feels hungry and cold, he feels as though he is in a better place mentally to be able to deal with the symptoms of his PTSD. His voice now sounds bright and upbeat, whereas before he sounded sad and forlorn and was prone to tears. He says that letting the NEA advisor into his home that day was the best thing that he has ever done. The scheme, he says, has transformed his life. It has given him health and financial independence and given him hope once again. The Connecting Homes for Health pilot research project aimed to test and measure the impact of applying health-based eligibility criteria to the provision of free gas grid connections funded through the Fuel Poor Network Extension Scheme and free first-time gas central heating measures alongside tailored energy efficiency advice and support funded through warm home discount industry initiatives on the health and wellbeing of vulnerable residents who are in or at risk of fuel poverty and at risk from cold-related ill health. The research element of the project was funded by Northern Gas Networks. The concept of proportionate universalism put forward by Michael Marmot argues that actions to tackle health inequalities need to be proportionate to the level of disadvantage experienced by different groups in society, i.e., the most vulnerable will need additional support. A mapping exercise was therefore designed and carried out for County Durham and Sunderland. This involved identifying GP practices within the 2 local authority areas that were showing a high prevalence of multiple cold-related ill health indicators according to the Quality Outcomes Framework, using a weighted ranking system. These were then overlapped with the Index of Multiple Deprivation rank, along with additional deprivation indicators and fuel poverty prevalence at ward level in order to give each GP practice catchment area an overall health, deprivation, fuel poverty risk score. Postcodes falling within a 2-mile radius of each of the highest scoring practices were identified and given to NGN, who carried out an additional layer of mapping to identify which properties were off gas. A comprehensive desk-based evidence review was carried out to understand the relationship between cold homes and ill health and to inform development of the eligibility criteria for the scheme. The full review can be accessed on our website. The pilot needed to balance narrow eligibility requirements to capture the most vulnerable, whilst allowing for some flexibility to capture other households in need. So I'd now like to touch on some of the impacts that were achieved for households, starting with the impact on their home heating and control experiences. Before receiving support, 76% of participants were not satisfied with the temperature in their home. 1 year after, 100% were satisfied or very satisfied. Before, 59% were not satisfied with how easy their heating system was to use. Within a year, 100% were satisfied or very satisfied. 74% were not satisfied with the amount of control they had over their heating before receiving support, but again, 100% were either satisfied or very satisfied afterwards. While 64% were not satisfied with how well their house kept the heat in pre-intervention, post-intervention, 86% were satisfied. The experience of subjective fuel poverty was also significantly reduced amongst participants. Before receiving support, 93% of households were in subjective fuel poverty. Within a year, this had reduced to 5%, meaning that 95% of participating households were not in subjective fuel poverty after receiving support. 1 year on, 100% of participants said they were satisfied with the new gas central heating system. It was also now easier for 90% and cheaper for 68% to heat enough hot water for their needs, and 35% used more hot water than they did before. 91% of those who had solid fuel systems before said that heating water in the summer no longer made their homes too hot. The experience of Carolyn and Lynette highlights the importance of having access to affordable and reliable hot water. Carolyn lives with her teenage daughter, Lynette. Carolyn is partially sighted and suffers from multiple health conditions. She is also the primary carer for Lynette, who has chronic bronchitis and asthma and who suffers from chronic skin and joint conditions. The pair live in a private rented, semi-detached home. Before, the heating system did not work and would constantly trip out the electricity. It was extremely inefficient and costly to run. Nevertheless, she had to have it turned on all the time to make sure the house could be warm enough for Lynette. As a result, she was falling deeper and deeper into fuel debt. The immersion heater did not work well, and Carolyn struggled to fill a bath with hot water at any one time. When she did want hot water, she had to wait for up to 2 hours. This made it practically impossible for Lynette to use hot water to manage her joint and skin conditions in the way that she needed. When they wanted to bathe, they had to go to her grandmother or her aunt's home instead. When things got really bad, Carolyn would borrow money from her sister to cover the cost of her energy bill. The home that Carolyn had envisioned became in her mind an unsanitary place which represented danger, discomfort and a risk to her own health and that of her daughter. 1 year on, and Carolyn and Lynette now have access to a working central heating system which provides them with as much heating and hot water as they need without having to worry about the cost. Their energy is cheaper and they have succeeded in having some of their outstanding fuel debt written off. Lynette is able to have as many hot baths as her condition requires, and her respiratory symptoms are less severe when she is warm at home. Carolyn is now pleased that she doesn't have to worry about keeping the whole house warm all day. She feels relieved that Lynette now has access to a comfortable environment in which she can be homeschooled without risking a worsening of her respiratory illness. They've been able to decorate and take pride in the beautiful home which they've been able to create. Carolyn has told her landlord that, should they decide to sell the property, she'd be keen to have first refusal. This is the place where she wants to live and where she wants to stay. It is her home. Indeed, the project either made energy bills more affordable or did not increase bills for a large proportion of participant households. Before, for example, 70% had found it hard to afford their energy bills. After, 79% found it easy. Before, 35% felt that their energy bills were manageable, but this increased to 77% afterwards. Similarly, whereas before only 34% felt their household budget was manageable, afterwards 67% felt so. The intervention also had an impact on the self-reported physical and mental health and well-being of participant households. For example, before intervention, 14% rated their physical health as either good or very good. Afterwards, 74% did so. Before, 37% rated mental health as good or very good. Afterwards, 79% did so. Before, 83% said their physical health was affected by being cold at home. Afterwards, only 7% felt that this was the case. Similarly, Before, 48% had said that their mental health was affected by being called at home. Afterwards, only 5% felt so. And finally, whereas before intervention, 73% said that their ability to cope with an existing illness was affected by being called at home, only 5% said that this was the case afterwards. Let's take a look at May's story. May is retired and suffers from COPD. At the point at which she signed up for the scheme, her lung capacity was at 39% and she would be constantly wheezing and struggling for breath. May previously had a solid fuel heating system in her home, which she hated. It was difficult to manage and she struggled to fetch the fuel she needed from the outside store due to her breathing. She was convinced that the ash and the dust created by the system was contributing to her respiratory illness and helping to make her symptoms worse. Not only that, but it made her reluctant to have her young grandchildren over to visit. She worried that 2 toddlers running around the living room were in danger of suffering serious burns and injuries should they fall over near or get too close to the fire that was in the middle of the room. 1 year after, and her gas central heating system has been installed, and May was saving between £80 and £90 a month on her fuel bills. Not only did this mean that she could now afford to buy more food and other essentials, but also that she could allow herself a little treat every now and then. She was finally able to put money into her savings account each month, which made her feel content and secure. Her lung capacity had increased over the period of a year from 39% to 50%. When her doctor expressed surprise and pleasure at the improvement and asked her if anything had changed, she said that she told him that it had been down to her new gas central heating system. She said that she was warmer and that the system was much cleaner, and she no longer felt that she was breathing in harmful substances while she was at home. She did not have to struggle to bring fuel in anymore and could instead just enjoy the warmth and the financial savings. Her children had noticed that her chest no longer made a constant rattling noise and that her pallor had improved. She no longer looked grey. Furthermore, she'd been able to spend more time with her young grandchildren, as she was now confident that they would not hurt themselves when playing in her living room. Instead of worrying about the dangers that her home might represent, she could simply enjoy being with her family. May felt as though the scheme had changed her life for the better and likened it to having won the lottery. Taken together, these results show that the application of the health-based and financial eligibility criteria and targeting mechanisms to the project was successfully able to reduce the experience of health and other social inequalities in extremely vulnerable households. However, the delivery pathways developed and enacted during the delivery phase of the project were also key in enabling such results to be achieved. Ultimately, preliminary mapping is important to identify target communities or areas, but that should be the start and not the end point of a successful recruitment strategy, especially when it comes to engaging and retaining the participation of extremely vulnerable clients. The reality is much more complex and much more expensive to deliver. In the case of this project, it meant repeated letters, phone calls, text messages, face-to-face home visits, door knocking, private and social landlord liaison. It also meant managing communications with local councils and parish councils and taking on board the processing of FPNES paperwork. Not only that, it meant organising and carrying out house clearances and storage space, coordinating the provision of small measures such as carpets and curtains, identifying and booking adequate interpretation services, and making onward referrals to other agencies able to provide additional support for multiple vulnerabilities. Ultimately, it's about fully understanding individual household situations and needs. At times, the application of a small crisis fund meant that the project was able to retain the participation of households who would have otherwise fallen by the wayside. Importantly, the retention of such households was achieved by spending relatively small amounts of money. The key factor was in staff taking the time to understand the barriers facing each individual household and creatively seeking out ways that would remove that barrier. The extra time and effort spent in recruiting and retaining the participation of vulnerable, hard-to-reach households was also necessary when securing gas connections for hard-to-connect properties, especially where legal complications can arise when having to seek permission to work on private land, for example. Challenges were encountered with regards to identifying whether a household had a meter point reference number, or MPRN, as well as in securing a timely gas meter installation. In this instance, for example, a company called Citrus Energy was identified who, as part of their energy advice and switching service, are able to secure first-time gas meter installations by comparing deals and installation timeframes between different suppliers. They secured a turnaround time of 10 days instead of 3 months to get gas meters fitted. The team were furthermore enabled to identify official minimum energy efficiency installation quality standards, and so produced an installation checklist that installers had to use to ensure works were carried out to the highest of standards, with appropriate quality assurance checks and visits then being carried out. It was also important to work with installers who understood or were able to be flexible in relation to the vulnerabilities of households. Our report sets out a number of both practical and policy-based recommendations to facilitate and enable the replication of the delivery pathways identified during the Connecting Homes for Health pilot scheme. Details of all the recommendations that we are making can be found in both the full report and executive summary. So that brings me to the end of a somewhat whirlwind tour of the project. If you're interested in finding out more, please visit the project page on NEA's website. You can also email NEA's research or policy manager using the addresses shown on screen. Thank you very much.
Lovely, and I'm delighted to say that I believe Jamie is in the audience. Yes, there she is down there. So, does anybody have any questions for Jamie, who is just here today for her last couple of days before she goes on maternity leave? So, please take advantage of the fact that she's here to answer questions, because this is the only forum that she'll be able to answer questions at, which is quite exciting. So please feel free to take yourselves off mute or use the reactions button down at the bottom and wave your hands. Jamie, did you want to say anything? Actually, as everybody's very shy this morning, which is a bit weird for my forum, I have to say. They're usually quite a shouty lot.
I guess just so we've launched this report today, and it's something that we're very excited about. It's kind of first of its kind research project. So as I mentioned in the presentation, it was designed to test and measure the impact of applying this health-based eligibility criteria to this kind of support, but not only that, to actually kind of demonstrate what is needed when it comes to helping the worst first, so actually meeting all these support needs of extremely vulnerable households. And I think the results that we've achieved from the project demonstrate absolutely that it is the right way to go. I mean, the transformations that we've seen in people's lives, both in terms of the statistical outputs, but also the qualitative outputs that have come through, and the client testimonies and stories really show the difference that we can make by taking this approach. And I think now the kind of key issue will be to take these learnings and to make sure that we can highlight at kind of strategic and policy levels, but also kind of at local delivery levels, why it's needed and why these funding streams need to complement each other, why they need to be aligned, and why they need to take health and the support needs of vulnerable households into account when we're designing and delivering them.
Lovely, and I've seen a couple of people raise their hands. So Louise, you raised your hand first. Let me unmute you. Please speak now.
Hi, Jamie. Yeah, no, I mean, it's amazing. Obviously, I've been sort of following this as you've been doing the work, and yeah, it's really exciting to see the final report. I look forward to reading it. But I really particularly just wanted to highlight the bit that came up in your presentation around that hand-holding. We find it's a really resource-heavy part of the project, and to have you having highlighted that, underlined it, put it forward, and said, you know, we can get incredible results, but it isn't just as simple as chucking some heating in someone's home. There's a lot of process, there's a lot of hand-holding, there's a lot of paperwork, and people just get lost unless we do that. And we should be building that in as an expectation into projects, because it doesn't happen otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so not so much question, but as a thank you for that.
Absolutely, I couldn't have said it better.
I will be drawing on that heavily, so thank you.
Peter, did you want to say something?
Well, I was just going to sort of add into what to Jamie's terrific presentation on the project. And also to note that there's a couple of colleagues of ours who also work directly on the project who might have comments just to amplify the report. But I suppose the thing I was going to say is that of all the projects that NEA has worked on recently, this was genuinely one of the most transformative in terms of the impacts that it had on the communities that it was working with. But it did come with kind of heavy attrition in the sense that it was a tough program to deliver. Part of that toughness was combining the requirements of various funding streams in order to be able to, deliver what was necessary. But the other thing that made it work is that we treated it like almost like an area-based type of approach. So it was concentrated on a couple of communities, a couple of areas, and it was that enabled us to be able to deliver the project in the way that it did. So there's lots to take away from it, not least the way that some of the funding streams didn't exactly didn't help delivery in the sense of the report. You know what I mean? So we had to kind of try and make the funding streams work the needs of the householders that we were seeking to transform the lives of. And I just think it's a real testament, really, to the guys that worked on the program that it was able to achieve the results that Jamie so clearly kind of described there.
If I could just come back in on that as well, Peter, I think what you say about the area-based approach is really key. So one of the things that we did at the outset of the project was to take publicly available data, so look at the quality outcomes framework or the public health outcomes framework and local fuel poverty statistics. And we designed this mapping scheme to get these weighted rankings of which GP practices were showing multiple prevalence of cold-related health conditions, but not just targeting on the basis of health, but looking at, okay, so we're showing a lot of cold-related ill health presence, and that also has high levels of fuel poverty, and that also has high levels of deprivation. So it was really kind of a refined and tailored approach to identifying those communities that really were in need of the most help first, and then making sure that as far as possible we stuck to helping people in those communities. I think often the danger in these kind of schemes, especially with one home discount, when you have the pressure of completing delivery within a year time frame, you tend to kind of get the households which are not necessarily easiest to engage, but which are able to be supported within the time frame. And the ones that are most vulnerable, that do take that extra time and that extra care and that extra hand holding, can kind of fall off the radar. And by taking that approach, so combining the mapping, the targeting, and then the dedicated support, it meant that we really were aiming help at the people who needed it and making sure that they participated in the process from start to finish. And as you can see, it was really successful. Tiring, but successful.
I think Helen wanted to come in. Helen Stockton.
Yeah. Hi everyone. I just wanted to chip in. Well done, Jamie. Fantastic presentation, and to the rest of NEA staff as well. It's been a fantastic team effort, and I think, as Jamie's demonstrated, has had some absolutely fantastic outcomes for clients, but I think also for NEA in terms of the lessons and learnings that we can take from the project as well. I just wanted to bring to everyone's attention that the report, I think Jamie mentions it briefly, the report's been launched today. So if you're on Twitter, on any social media platforms, please do go along, take a look, have a look at the resources. There's the report, but there's also some complementary resources available, and we'll be promoting them over the coming weeks. And if you feel so inclined, please do share them to your Twitter followers, Facebook followers as well, or LinkedIn and similar. But yeah, well done, Jamie. Fantastic presentation.
Yes, it's really interesting. We've got a question come up in the chat from Ailsa. Will the targeting process used on this project be part of the final report?
So yes, the final report does describe in detail the targeting methods that we used. If anyone is more interested in having more detail than what is featured in the final report, do please get in touch and get in touch with Helen, because as Rebecca mentioned, I won't be around after the end of this week, but we do have extensive detail on exactly the methods that we use to do the weighted ranking of the GP practice surgeries and how we overlap that with fuel poverty data and things like that. So if anyone is interested in the specifics of it beyond that which is in the final report, just get in touch and we're more than happy to share what we've done.
Brilliant. It's lovely. That's really interesting, and it's I think it's lovely to share such a detailed project with everybody. It's nice to see it from the beginning to the start. Right, so I'm keeping an eye on the time, being as that I am the chair. Actually, and I just wanted to say, happy anniversary to me, because I've been running NEA Fuel Poverty Forums for 10 years now. 10 years, astonishing. I'm not quite sure how it's...
Only 10 years, Rebecca.
10 years. In June was my NEA 10-year anniversary. And do you know what? I still get really nervous every single one I do. It's really strange. Why is it never relaxing? But I do love them. And talking about the bits that I love, the next bit I love a lot, and this is where I get to do the round the room thing, where I go to everybody around the room, which actually in this room there are some shrimp, but they're not going to say very much. So what I'm going to try and do is I am going to go along the little boxes that I've got on my screen and ask you if you have an update, because I think that might be an easier way of doing it than getting everybody to raise their hands and stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you if you have anything to share about what you've been up to, what you're about to get up to, anything positive that you're working on at the moment, anything rubbish that's happening, that's also fine. But just very briefly, because there are quite a lot of us, and then we will have a quick tea break, and so you can have a chat as well if you like over the tea break. So I'm going to, first one we've got Helen Dean. Helen, did you have anything you wanted to share with us? You're on mute at the moment, so I will unmute you. There we go. 1 second, you're nearly unmuted. There you go, you're unmuted.
Hi, hi everybody. I'm just very interested in the people in the forum ideas over overcoming barriers to communication in a virtual world with low-income families who have a lot on their plate, dealing with getting food on the table, and aren't particularly interested in reducing their gas and electricity costs at home. So my project targets low-income families. I have a great success rate when I go and visit them in children's centres and other places, but I found it really tough over the last months. But I don't know whether that, Rebecca, is really something for a chat for later rather than, yeah.
Well, I think that'll actually fit in really nicely to the workshop section, actually. Okay. So I think we'll definitely discuss it in there. Thank you, Helen. Next along the line is Julie. I'm going to unmute you, Julie, to see if you've got anything to say. Hi, Julie. So, Julie, because I don't know what your surname is, it's Julie with the glasses and the long brown hair.
Yeah, hi.
Hello.
I haven't really got anything for this bit. So
that's absolutely fine.
Citizens advice, so I'm more here to find out what help is available.
No problem. And absolutely. And if you want to chat more over tea break, I'll stay here at tea break, and we can have a chat about that kind of thing as well. Lovely. I shall meet you back again. Now, who have I got next? I've got Donna. Donna, you can unmute yourself if you have anything to say. Hello. Hang on, there you go. I've unmuted you. Hopefully. No, I haven't yet. 1 second, Donna. It's not working. Ah, there we go. You're back.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Great presentations. I just wanted to say, with the UK moving towards decarbonisation and less reliance on fossil fuels, are you looking at any other options other than gas for your projects?
I'm sorry, Donna. It's a little bit difficult to hear you. Actually, you've gone a bit sounding like a robot.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, that's fine. If you'd just like to repeat what you just said.
Okay. Great presentations. Thank you for inviting me. Hello, everybody. I just wondered, with the UK moving towards decarbonisation and less reliance on fossil fuels, are you looking at any other forms of energy heating other than gas central heating?
Well, that's a good question, and I think we'll probably come to that chat a bit over the tea break and the workshops, and we'll see what everybody else has got to say. Thank you. Louise T, have you got anything for us?
Not a lot. We've mainly been focusing on fuel vouchers. So sort of working, well, so for those who don't know, I work in East Sussex. We have the Warm Home Check Service in East Sussex, which is a partnership programme with Citizens Advice and Retrofit Works. So Citizens Advice with us and Citizens Advice West Sussex have worked together to form a Sussex-wide fuel voucher scheme, sort of partly in conjunction with Your Energy Sussex and also with some other pots of money that we've been finding around, and more recently with some energy redress money. So that's been a lot of what we've been doing recently, responding to that as sort of quite an urgent extra need during the current crisis, and looking to how to make that sustainable and easy to administer going forward. And now we're starting to come out the other side. So yeah, getting services sort of up and running as much as we can with who we work with, and looking to try and get a lot of activity going in advance of winter and the dreaded second spike. But yeah, we're holding on to our hats and waiting for the virus to come through for us mainly, actually. So yeah, that's where we're at.
Lovely, thank you very much. Mark Dalen from EDF has had to leave us, but I've got a little update from him. EDF is still funding Shine and funding to other London boroughs through Eco with Happy Energy, also funding Kent County Council with their Warm Home scheme. Okay, lovely. Next on, anybody who I'm missing out, in case you're wondering, is they are secretly an NEA member of staff who's infiltrated the forum, just in case you're wondering. So I'm going to move to Katie Revel. Katie, have you got anything you would like to share with us? I will unmute you. There we go. Hang on. There, no, I think we're right. Let's try again. I'll come back to you in a minute. Oh, hang on, no, you're live now. You're live.
My name's Katie Revel. I work for the Energy Saving Trust. I'm one of the development officers on the Energy Redress Scheme. So I do possibly recognise some of you put faces. It might be a chance for you to put a face to a name, because I might fund some of your projects or organisations. I look after projects kind of in England and Wales, and I look after, we're hoping to launch, I'm trying to think of anything useful I can tell you about the redress scheme, but we are hoping to launch round 8 possibly next week, and there possibly will be another round of the crisis fund opening as well, which is for the emergency fuel vouchers that some of you may have got funding from us to deliver. So hi, I am around if you have any questions for me, and nice to see you all.
Lovely, thank you, Katie. And moving down, I've got Martin. Hello, Martin. Where are you from? I'm not sure you've been to one of my forums before. I don't recognise you, but it might be that you have been, but you're only this big on my screen.
Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes, thank you.
No, I'm a bit of a guest here. Yeah, my name's Martin. I work for a social enterprise called Matilda's Planet.
Ah, right. Yes, I know. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
And we do lots of retrofit, mainly Matilda's blanket, an internal wall insulation system. And maybe the interesting thing about that for this forum is that we can, as a social enterprise, we can train teams locally in housing associations or councils to install the measure for themselves locally. So it's as much, and it's all very semi-skilled work. So the people who've been made recently unemployed could move into. So it basically can be as much a job creation, local job creation scheme as a reducing carbon and reducing fuel poverty scheme.
Lovely.
And it does tend to reduce heating bills in solid wall homes straight away by about 50%. So it's like a very effective first measure if anybody's organisations are looking for something like that.
Lovely, thank you very much, Martin. Moving along. Verena, hello. It's been a long time. Nice to see you. Let me unmute you. I think I've unmuted you. Hang on. Wait a minute. No, you're still mute. No, hang on. If I unmute you and you, hang on. It'll do it in a second. There we go. Right. Speak.
Hello.
Hello.
Verena Boxall from Runnymede Borough Council. Lots of faces I don't know. And Joanne Williams, who's down the other end somewhere on your screen. We come as a pair. I'll run quickly through what we're doing. If Joanne has got some things I've missed, then she can put her hand up or whatever, which I often do. The latest I have to tell was I call them the Department of Bees, but they're bees, aren't they? I always call them the busy bees. We had the information request for the household retrofit delivery scheme. So we have put into that. We run a scheme on Eco3, EcoFlex with Happy Energy Solutions, and up until March 2020, we were having very great success with this, with our marketing with them and our boiler and insulation works. Partnering also with the Heat the Home Counties scheme. There's 5 local authorities with the affordable warmth funding. Unfortunately, as things came to a grinding halt, they're now ramped up, ready to go back and do surveys with PPE, etc., etc. So there's an awful lot in the pipeline that had to be stopped. With the Heat the Home Counties, that's also for the gas connections for those off grid and potentially air source heat pumps. So lots in the pipeline, but up until March we'd done very well with the schemes, but it all stopped, as we know. So we've put into the going back to the Department of Bees info request, household retrofit delivery. We've mentioned about the client contribution, which is so disabling for our vulnerable people. So that's what we've highlighted there. Even going for disabled facility grant top up, better care fund top up, there's usually at least £1,000 for our most vulnerable to find. And we don't have any spare money for private sector in Runnymede, so that's what we've put in for that. I was very glad because it's one of my little babies is park homes. We have 1,200 private sector park homes in Runnymede, as does probably many people along in our group. So we've done a few schemes in the past and we've been very successful. We have surveys done, we have a list of people, we are ready, what they were calling it, shovel ready schemes. We certainly have that in park homes. So again, we put that in to bays as part of the potential for the funding. We had already been talking to an installer who can up the Eco3 and EcoFlex funding by 25% anyway because of their type of insulation. So with all of that, we're hoping that we can move forward again with another park home scheme because it's very important in our area. So we have also got we had the smart meter project at the back end of last year, and we were going to follow up on a lot of that again this year. That we went out to our day centres, the libraries, you know, we were doing lots of road shows and it was very, very popular. We paid for lunches in the day centres, so we got a captive audience. So they couldn't run away. So that was very, very successful, and we did awareness raising also for insulation and boiler measures. So picking up on a few things that other people mentioned, very good. I'm not really sure about the EST redress scheme, so if we can have some more information on that, that would be lovely. We did also put, whilst we were doing our welfare calls during lockdown to our elderly and vulnerable, making sure they were fed and watered and medications, it was evident there was a lot of them, although they don't have the facility, they would be very keen to get online, is what they call it, on the line or on the computer or stuff like that. So I also put into the Bays project potentially funding for training and infrastructure to go to the most vulnerable, especially those that cannot get out. And then we could potentially roll that out as a pilot, and it could be UK wide. I know that's big dreams, but there's a lot of people out there that are already in their 70s that don't, but want to. It's not that they can't, they just don't. So yeah, if we could find some funding, anybody find some funding that way, we'd be happy to buddy up on that one, because I think it was evident that there were so many people that wanted to do that, and even those that had been given laptops and broadband connected by their family still didn't know how to use it, so they couldn't do their online shopping. And then it would open up other offerings from local authorities and going online, paying for things, etc. God forbid that we don't have a second wave, but who knows. And that, I'll shut up now. So just, yeah, we're doing the normal, looking at projects, etc, etc, etc.
Brilliant, thank you very much, Verena. That's a really useful update. And I've had a message from Helen Stockton. I just caught the question re low carbon transition. We are doing quite a lot around decarbonising heat and ensuring that the energy transition is just a fair one. She is going to ask Matt to send information through, Matt Copeland. Of course, energy efficiency, you'd think I'd be able to say that by now, wouldn't you? Remains one of our biggest calls for action. And while we make our way through the transition, we are keen to ensure that vulnerable households are supported to make the transition away from carbon-intensive fuels and unaffordable and inefficient heating sources. To less carbon intensive and more energy efficient and affordable sources. Cool. Lovely. Oh, and Katie has sent through just to me the link to the energy redress scheme. So Katie, if you want to share that to everybody rather than just me, that would be great, because I don't know how to share it from the chat bit. Thank you. If not, don't
Rebecca,
worry.
something's happened. Sorry, something's happened to the chat. We can only now send private messages to you, Nina, and Brian.
Oh, that's weird. Okay, I'm going to
the
get
public chat's turned off.
Nina and Brian, if you can have a look at that and see what's going on with that. Thank you very much. Okay, so who have we got next? We've got Alyssa from AGK. Did you have anything you wanted to share?
Hi, it's Elisa.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Oh yes, sorry.
That's all right. Just a very quick update to say that I run one of our Warm Homes programs. We have local partners across the country who deliver it sort of on the front line. But we have our whole Warm Homes program is funded by 4 energy suppliers. And we're just now in the process of trying to have the new way of delivering approved by Ofgem. And so one of my colleagues is currently on a call right now with Ofgem, and we're just sort of going to them to say, this is kind of how we need to change, because before everything was face-to-face delivery. So that is one of the struggles that we have this year, because we deliver both benefit entitlement checks to help people who are at risk or in fuel poverty to basically get the money that they're entitled to and help them pay their bills. But equally, we do a home energy check where we have handy people go into people's homes and help install small measures to make their home more energy efficient. And that's the one that we'll really struggle with this year, depending on how the shielding situation changes. So that's kind of where we are. We're hoping, fingers crossed, that we'll be able to start delivering at the beginning of September. And I just wanted to touch very quickly on something Verena said about digital inclusion. One of my colleagues does run a digital inclusion program at Age UK, which is obviously for older people. And if you wanted some more information on that, I can pop my email address into the chat if you wanted to get in touch, and I could point you in the right direction.
Brilliant.
Okay, thank you.
I think that's one of the difficult things about this format is it's a lot harder to network when you're all little tiny squares on a screen, isn't it? So thank you.
Thank you.
Julie Ford, have you got anything you would like to share with us?
Hi there. Yeah, thanks very much. I'm quite used to these forums now. I think I'm all zoomed out to a point, I think. I just wanted to really, I think during the time we're going to breakout rooms, maybe speak to Louise and Katie. I'm trying to set up a fuel poverty fund in my local area in Hertfordshire. And I'm really struggling because the other organisations that I want to work with, such as Citizens Advice and a local homeless charity and the food bank, are very unengaging. They're not interested in getting involved with this. We've got a really high level of fuel poverty in our private rented sector here. And latest figures have shown COVID has had a huge impact on that as well. And I just really want some help because I'm doing this all by myself. I don't work for an organisation or anything like that. I'm trying to do this sort of single-handedly. And I just want some help and a bit of advice of what direction I need to go in, because I've contacted all of these people directly and I've just either got no response whatsoever or they just don't feel that it's something they want to get involved with. But even the local council have said it's one of the main issues they're seeing coming through from people that are contacting them, but even the local council aren't interested in getting involved on board with the project. Even though I've said, look, I'll do all the work, you guys just benefit at the end of it. I seem to be hitting brick walls and it would be just nice to get some help, really.
Absolutely, yeah. I think we can all share some insight over the tea break with you, Julie, and if you would like to swap email addresses in the chat as well, that would be great.
Yeah,
Thank
more
you.
than happy to have a chat, maybe separately or in tea breaks or whatever is easiest. Yeah, talk.
Brilliant. That'd be great. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank
How
you.
you might overcome some of those barriers.
Yeah. We've all been there. Tanya Jennings, did you want to share anything with us? I can't see your face.
I'll turn myself on. Oh, maybe
Hi.
inside of my computer. Eventually. There we go. Hi. So Ealing is actually doing quite a bit right now. We've just re-tendered our Green Doctor program, Healthy Homes Ealing. So Groundwork has won that, and it will be going. Agility Eco are currently managing it, but in a couple of weeks it'll go back to Groundwork. We've greatly expanded the program from 200 visits a year to 400. We're not actually quite sure how that's going to look. Sorry, 300. 400 would be ambitious. 300. We're not sure what that looks like in a COVID world.
Oh,
so,
Tanya,
sorry, is my microphone terrible?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think we might have to stop you there.
Let me turn the video. Let me just turn my video off.
Okay. That's
not worth it. We'll see if does that help at all.
It is a little bit better, yeah.
Okay, sorry, I don't know what's happening. I usually have really good internet today. It's not that day. But yeah, so we've re-tendered Healthy Homes Ealing. We're doing a huge Energy Sprong project with a few other councils. So we're trying to get that out to tender soon through the GLA. And there's lots of other stuff going on, but it's really all our climate action. Our Climate Declaration Action Plan has now been signed off. The draft version has been signed off by our cabinet. So now it's really about putting it into action and really just making sure that, really just that fuel poverty stays at the front of everything we do. So kind of our next step is looking at how do we keep training frontline people. And I'll stop because my connection is crap. Sorry.
Brilliant. No problem, Tanya. Thank you. Mark Crump, did you have anything briefly you wanted to share with us? You don't have to if you don't want to. If you want to appear magically, no, that's fine. Antonia from Portsmouth, hello. Did you want to share anything? And I do mean briefly because we're running a bit low on time at the moment.
Yeah, hi. Sorry, I've never been to one of these before, but it's good.
That's okay. Well, welcome.
Yeah, thanks. So, Portsmouth City Council, we've finally finalised and published our energy and water efficiency at home strategy. That's available to view. We've been using redress funding in partnership with a local charity to offer fuel vouchers over the COVID period. We're looking at some domestic solar and storage projects where the resident directly gets the energy generated rather than just for communal areas. We're looking at a couple of innovation projects under the Eco Innovation strand, and those are starting to go underway. We're offering a video call support service for residents, as all of our face-to-face schemes have had to be stopped at the moment. We are releasing our year impact report for our schemes from May to May last year. We have seen for some of the schemes over 200% increase in uptake, which is massive. And then finally, we have a new blog on our Switched On Portsmouth website, and we are constantly updating that with posts relevant to what's happening with the whole COVID situation and everything.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, and thank you for being so succinct. Now, I'm presuming that's Ailsa from NEA there, so I will just scoot over there. Katie Schiller, did you have anything you wanted to share briefly with us? Yes? Oh, hello. You're on mute at the moment. Hang on a minute. Let me just unmute you. Bear with a second. Oh, I think you're. Oh, there you go. Go ahead.
Hi, so I work for Southampton City Council, and we have our own energy company. So we were really focusing on getting people to switch. And ironically, we did a council tax wide mail out in March, and last year that was very successful, but this year not, which you would have thought with more people at home, people would be more on top of looking at switching. But actually, switching nationally has been down. And we've seen less engagement generally across, people looking at quote portal or other quote portals. So probably quite a lot of you, we've been kind of very much struggling to engage with residents, despite the fact more people are spending time online. They're not looking at the consumption of their bills. And we've also had quite a few customers that have been obviously struggling with their bills because they're self-employed and they're not getting income in. So it's just kind of been dealing with stuff like that. And we've also recently got HNDU funding to work with the university and Southampton Hospital to see if we can do like a district-wide heat network and just kind of scope that a bit more. So got some projects on the go, but yeah.
Lovely. Excellent. Thank you very much. Astrid, did you have anything you wanted to share briefly?
Yeah, just very briefly. I'm Astrid. I'm from Citizens Advice in Reading. We're part of an EU project through Horizon 2020 called STEP Solutions to Tackle Energy Poverty, which we're running with 9 other countries to tackle fuel poverty, look at how we can make energy efficiency easier to access, and also some policy recommendations for local, national, European level government. But obviously what we're doing at the moment is working out how we're going to do all of that under COVID-19 and social distancing restrictions and all of those sorts of things. So digital inclusion, contacting people who we would normally see face to face, but now have to see by phone or over the internet or whatever. That's what we're working through at the moment, same as probably every face-to-face organisation. So.
Absolutely. Lovely. Thank you very much. Malcolm from Croydon, did you have anything very briefly you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, I'll try and be quick. Yeah, Malcolm from Croydon. Yeah, it's really interesting hearing Jamie's presentation, because we at Croydon are in the process of actually bringing our fuel poverty service in-house to be able to offer some of the sort of support that was sort of highlighted. Hopefully starting to recruit within a few weeks. Unfortunately, with the financial situation at the council, it's a bit more complex getting sign-off for the recruitment, although we have full funding. So we're looking at recruiting 2 experienced advisors. We also have funding for a 3rd post that will be doing more outreach, but unfortunately with the uncertainty as to when we can actually start face-to-face contact, we're holding back on that one. So our own team will be a sort of flexible resource, allowing really involved support for residents who need it. I mean, the current model, which is so common of a single home visit, is really not fit for purpose for vulnerable people who really need a little bit more than sort of being bombarded for information for 2 hours and end of story, which unfortunately is the case in Croydon and probably a lot of other boroughs. So sort of hand-holding people through the eco application process, supporting and working with landlords as well, because we know the take-up for eco and the London Warmer Home Scheme is very, very low in the private rented sector. I believe only about 10% of applicants in London for a private sector scheme are rented, whereas about 35% of London is rented. And we're also visiting people after the measures are fitted. There's no point fitting a measure, then the person doesn't really understand how to use it. And we are looking at trying to fit air source heat pumps instead of the gas as well. So we've got a little bit of funding for that. And more generally, supporting people on an ongoing basis where appropriate. So rather than help them switch supply once or apply for warm home discount for order group once, we go back to them every year, periodically checking that their heating controls are set appropriately. An in-house resource will allow that sort of joined out working with other council services, voluntary community sector in the borough, and hopefully be able to create a volunteer network and also sort of more targeting. I mean, in Croydon, our fuel poverty varies from 5.6% to 22.9%, the highest LSOA in South London. So we can really be on the ground, you know, delivering, you know, information to the actual properties that need it the most. So plenty other going on, but I'll leave it at that.
Lovely, thank you very much, Malcolm. Now, I am acutely aware that because we're all nice and chatty, we're running a little bit low on time, but I think we can spare a couple more minutes just for the last few people if anybody wants to update us. So we've got somebody called Deanna. Deanna, did you want to share anything with us? No? Okay. Justine, hello. Did you want to update us briefly on what you're up to? No? Okay, good. But it's nice to virtually see you. And Jill Daniel from Horsham, how very exciting. It's been a very long time since you've made it to one of my forums, because I know that they don't really let you do that kind of thing anymore, but thank you for coming. Tim Roebuck, did you want to share anything with us? No? And I've got A. Clixby, Jill and Joanne. So if any of you last few people would like to share anything, unmute yourselves quickly. Oh, hello, we've got A. Clixby unmuting themselves.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, you're right. I'm sort of new to the southern forums. I normally go to the northern ones, but I've just started a new job with SIG, which is now national, but a national sort of thing. And I've been in contact with Matt last week about the future of eco. That's sort of been my bugbear for the last however many years. And I'd asked Matt earlier last week what any of his thoughts were on the eco progress at the moment, or lack of, and especially how it doesn't really help the fuel poor, because it's the properties where the fuel poor traditionally live aren't worth doing in eco, unfortunately, generally.
Absolutely, no, very good point. And I think that's something it's perhaps outside the scope of what we're covering at the moment.
Yeah.
But a very good point. And I'd be happy to have a chat to you at a later date. So I'll make sure you get my email address.
Thank you.
Chat. Lovely. Okay. Well, let me just scoot back over to the other side here. Okay. So we've got time for a very quick tea break / comfort break. So I'll give you 5 minutes, and then you can either stay here and chat or nip off to your kitchen / other parts of your flat or house and come back in 5 minutes. And anybody who wants to stay here and chat, then please feel free to do so. And if we can unmute everybody, that would be great. I'm not sure if I can do that from here, actually.
Unmuted. There you go.
Lovely. Nina, can you unmute everybody virtually?
You can actually press.
Sorry, I just tried to ask to unmute everyone, but it wouldn't.
I think you just muted us all.
I think I did.
We can unmute ourselves.
Yeah, you can all unmute yourselves. If
now I have allowed you all to unmute yourself. Yep.
Brilliant. Lovely. So, anybody who's staying, feel free to chat. There was a message from Julie from Canterbury CAB. Hello. And I will, I wrote your email address down, so I will drop you an email in the next couple of days, and we can have a chat about what support is available down in East Kent. Because there's definitely some stuff that we can do to support you as an organisation, and vice versa, I'm sure. So I'll have a chat to you about that. And the kind of stuff that I've been doing over in Kent recently as well. Lovely. Well, I'm not going to go make myself a cup of tea, because otherwise I'm going to, like, you know, start
float out.
But yeah, so I'm just going to relax here and let you enjoy my knitting behind me here.
Very nice.
This is a very interesting way of doing the forum. I miss meeting you all face to face. It's very peculiar seeing lots of little small faces, and also it's and I say this when I'm always on these kind of calls. It's a bit like also being at the hairdressers at the same time, because you have to look at yourself all the time, unless you kind of like remember to scoot your own face off the screen, which is a little bit weird. So I'm always very aware of what my hair's doing, and I think that's look a bit swollen over to the side. Oh no! Whereas normally I don't even notice. However, this is definitely the first forum I've done with no shoes and socks on.
Oh, I'm with you on that one. No,
I've got slippers.
Thanks, Helen.
You're giving me some confidence, Rebecca, as I never chaired a forum before, and my first one is going to be a virtual one. You're giving me a lot of confidence today. So.
Oh, well, my pleasure. And like I said, I have been doing them for a few years, but you don't tend to find actually that our forum audiences are generally very lovely, nice people who are here because they're interested in fuel poverty and want to share information with each other and are here to support people who are vulnerable. So as an audience, they're usually pretty cool. I haven't got any like, you know, any exciting speakers from BEIS or any of the government departments for change. It has been a bit of an NEA show today, but it's been really nice having the updates for everybody. I've really appreciated that, so that's really good.
Rebecca, I'm just wondering, I don't know if this has been mentioned already, but what's happening with the NEA Fuel Poverty Conference?
Well, as I understand it, plans are afoot. Nina, would you like to say anything about that?
Yes, I would, but I can't say too much. Basically, the quick answer is obviously it has been cancelled in person, and we're all absolutely devastated that we won't be able to, for the first time in I don't know how many years, not be able to get together and see each other properly. However, we will be doing something, and plans are sort of just starting to roll on doing a kind of weeks, little bit of a fuel poverty fest, where we will be kind of offering different sessions and interactive kind of workshops, seminars, hopefully some really exciting speakers. But at this stage, it's kind of like at a draft proposal stage. So you'll have to just kind of keep tuning in and see what we come up with. But we had a chat to start kicking this off with Adam, our chief executive, yesterday. So hopefully by the end of this month, we'll be able to share something more with you about where we stand and what we can offer you this year.
Cool. So in a minute, I'm going to split you all into breakout groups, but you won't be able to see these questions when you're in your breakout groups. So you might want to quickly jot down a rough idea of these questions. Basically, I thought it would be really nice for you to have a nice chat about best practice and challenges about supporting the fuel poor during the pandemic. So what are the main challenges your organisation is currently facing? Try not to dwell too long on that, because we all know that it's difficult. I think number 2 is probably one of the most useful ones, and number 3 as well. So do you have any best practice or successes that you can share? Particularly with vulnerable customers, even if it's something really small, like you've managed to get something out in the post to somebody and it's come back again really quickly, or you know, it doesn't have to be a grand new project that you've come up with. And number 3, what can we do to help you? We are here to help. We love helping, hence the forums, and actually hence us doing this job. So if there's anything we can do to support you as organisations, don't forget that that's what we're here for. And I've put my email address up on the chat as well. So do feel free to get in touch with me if you can think of anything that we can do to help. But you won't be recorded when you're in the breakout groups. But if you can nominate somebody to make a few notes while you're in the group, that would be fantastic. And you can feed that back by chat or just email them to me afterwards. That would be lovely. Now I think we're probably mainly back in the room, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. Hopefully you've all managed to make a note of those. Oh, hang on, I'm going to stop share. There we go, lovely. And now I'm going to magically put you all in breakout rooms.
Mark, yeah.
Lovely, brilliant. Yeah. Lovely, thank you everybody. Well, that's brilliant. To be honest, we don't really have time to feedback, but I think the most important thing about the workshops is actually being able to have a good whinge and also to celebrate stuff that's been going on. So if anybody who's made any notes could drop me an email, I would be very grateful, or drop something into the chat, because we keep a note of the chat. My email is rebecca.jones@nea.org.uk. That'd be brilliant. And if you've got anything else that you want to feedback to us, particularly around how we can help you, like I said, we'd be more than happy to help. And I also just wanted to say, and this is backwards, of course, this says, thanks a bunch.